Jody Mosher here from the Valley Independent Sentinel, and we're on to part 4 of Flood of 55.
Guidance of our Chief O'Brien, and he'll be assisted by our auxiliary police and units from the National Guard and volunteers. I would certainly like to make a very down-to-earth appeal to the people in the neighboring communities not to visit Ansonia for a few days. It will certainly give us a chance to get on our feet and a chance to breathe so that we can straighten this deal out.
While I worked my way from Ansonia to Seymour, George Phillips was still continuing the job he had begun 12 hours before. The task of finding the tiny significant facts out of a morass of confusion, often ad-libbing because there was no time to write. It was a clear picture in proper perspective. We found later that many people in the stricken areas knew far less about what was going on in their immediate vicinity than WAVZ listeners in the New Haven area. You can hear the strain in George Phillips' voice at 6:30 p.m. after 12 hours of continuous news broadcasting.
As yet, WAVZ has not been able to contact the Torrington-Winsted area, though we have tried all day long. WAVZ's Tiny Markle is now in the Ansonia, Derby, Seymour, and Naugatuck area. Markle spoke with Mayor William Sheasby of Ansonia, who reported there were no casualties in that town, though there's a lot of cleaning up to do once the waters recede. No casualties have been reported in Derby either. We have been unable to contact Seymour and Naugatuck.
Yes, from Ansonia, I drove toward Seymour, but I had to leave my car a mile away. After crossing the only remaining link into the town, a footbridge, I talked with workers who had rescued hundreds and hundreds that day. Not all their efforts could succeed. Earlier, they had tried to persuade two elderly women to leave their home. For hours, the women haggled and refused. As the water rose, they called for help. The rescuers had them almost within their grasp when the angry torrent snatched the pair from their grip, pulled them into the swirling waters. They have not been seen since. That night, I drove back to WAVZ through a land of strange contrasts, going past death, destruction, despair, and inevitably mud, and passing here and there sections where life went on as usual. The kids were playing baseball, men mowing lawns. Night closed in on Connecticut and on its rescue effort. A new day brought answers. The Connecticut River did not overflow its banks. The receding Naugatuck, on the other hand, uncovered answers far worse than anyone could have possibly believed. In Stroudsburg, Pennsylvania, here and there in 7 states, the story was much the same.
I've just made an extensive auto tour of the flood-ravaged Naugatuck Valley from Winsted in the northwest corner of the state to Ansonia, Naugatuck, and Seymour in the south. What I saw all along the winding, weaving path of the now peaceful and tranquil Naugatuck is indescribable. All along the valley, I saw heartbreaking devastation. Homes and mills were completely washed away. Miles and miles of railroad track was undermined, and other sections were turned and twisted by the once raging Naugatuck. Bridges were completely washed away, and others were made impassable and dangerous. Giant boxcars were hurled like toys at the will of the surging current against trees and buildings. Autos were strewn up and down the valley, in the stream itself, and along its winding path from Winsted to Naugatuck. Several of the autos were twisted wrecks, as if a giant hand had crushed them within its grip. Others had slammed into trees and homes. The people in Winsted are still dazed, and those in the low-lying areas have lost everything. I observed canteens set up by the Red Cross to feed and clothe the homeless. Armed men stand guard with rifles poised to shoot in the event of looting. It will be weeks and possibly months and even years before the Winsted business area is restored. Moving to the south, I came upon what used to be Torrington, another city in which I spent a few years. I wish I had never seen it as I did today. The center of Torrington is 75% destroyed, although not as bad as Winstead. The business area, which extends out from the center in the 5 points of a star, has been ruined. A bridge in the center was washed away, along with 2- and 3-story structures. There was more than 20 feet of water in the heart of the city. The big power plant of the Connecticut Light and Power Company was inundated completely, but the oil and gas tanks did not explode. Torrington's factories have been knocked out, except for one, the Torrington Company.
This is Tiny Markle reporting from Ansonia, Connecticut. Before me, as I look up Main Street in Ansonia, we can see that for a space of about 1 mile, every storefront on both sides of the street has been completely destroyed by tons and tons of water here. Every storefront destroyed except one. Paradoxically, that's the one that houses the Ansonia Water Company offices. But there's very little room for humor here in Ansonia today.
This is George Lazat in Waterbury. All the men in Waterbury are going around unshaven today. There is no water and no electricity in Waterbury.
You know, the flood, like a war, brings out the best or the worst in people. There was some looting. There were some profiteers. There were people with an angle. But for the most part, there must have been love of fellow man. People, thousands of them, unnamed, seeking nothing in return, asked what could they do, and then did it.
What Salvatore Amato did yesterday is what New Haveners are doing every minute of the day. Sal started to the market early yesterday with some 1,400 ears of corn. On the way, he began thinking of the flood victims in Connecticut. Well, the corn never got to market. It ended up going to the flood victims in Waterbury. New Haven has sent a contingent of 100 men fully equipped and supplied to help with rehabilitation in Ansonia. The men are members of the Fire, Police, Public Works, and Park Department. Mayor Lee went along with the group. Last night, 35 men of the New Haven Police Auxiliary patrolled the streets of Naugatuck from 4 to 12.
At WAVZ, we had to maintain a special staff at our telephone switchboard. So closely had we become identified with the flood and flood relief that telephones rang continually. People asking, how could they help? Others volunteering information. We broadcast about where to bring clothing, canned goods, diapers, how to send contributions to the Red Cross. At 8:44 a.m., August 23rd, I was at Bradley Field near Hartford, Connecticut, when President Dwight D. Eisenhower descended from the Columbine III.
I am going to consult immediately with the leaders of Congress. If necessary, I shall call a special session. But what I want to talk about now, just for a moment, is this. The great value of Red Cross money here. Red Cross money is not limited. It goes to people that are in need, to human beings, not just to cleaning roads and rebuilding schools, but to people that are hungry, or cold, and have no place to go. In my opinion, everybody in America, everybody in the sound of my voice, will sleep better tonight if he turns in everything that he can spare to meet this great disaster that's happened to our fellow Americans.
And Connecticut went on digging its way out, paced by a tireless governor who said, we would emerge from the flood disaster a finer state, a greater state.